This is Brian Rivera, Communications 3315. Will be advanced public speaking, persuasive speech. This is my audience. First, I'm going to read something for us, all of us that are in this room today. It's the 26th Amendment. It says, in Section 1 of the 26th Amendment, it says, the rights of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or obliged by the United States or any state on account of age. So the 26th Amendment, along with some provisions to the amendment, give everyone in this room over the age of 18 the opportunity to vote in the upcoming presidential election here in November. And that's according to the Cornell website. A 16-year-old can work, because I remember when I was 16. They can go to jail, never did that. Pay taxes, join the military, and get a driver's license. Shouldn't 16 and 18-year-olds be given the opportunity to vote like all of us here? That's one of the open debates that's been debated since the 1960s. 16-year-olds, they have it good today. They can log on to the internet just using a cell phone. They can send a text message instead of calling their friends or parents. And they can download a whole album from Apple Store in less than 2 minutes. Times have really changed. Do you remember when you were 16? I know I do. I remember living at home, not paying any bills, hanging out with my friends on the weekends, and my worries, there were none. The only ones that I have were just the regular growing pains. If we all got the chance to vote this fall for the voting age to drop from 18 to 16, could you all do it? When I was 16, I can say now that I was pretty smart, and sometimes I had to be dependent on my own. I actually think the 16-year-old Brian Rivera would have made a good voter. I can tell you today that there's decent, credible organizations like the NYRA, or the National Youth Rights Association, fairvote.org, and freechild.org that are actually fighting for the voting age to drop all over the United States. On the NYR website, there was 2 college professors that are quoted challenging the 26th Amendment. They said that the right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years age or older, they're quoting the amendment, to vote shall not be denied or obliged by the United States or by any state on account. And that was according to the NYRA. The constitutional lawyer like Vikram Amar from the University of California, Hastings, and Catherine Hunt, Federal from Ohio State University, believed that the language in the 26th Amendment only prohibits the jurisdiction from setting a voting age above the age of 18. It doesn't prohibit teens from the age of 18 or below 18 not to vote. And that's also according to the NYRA, which I'll use that website a lot. I bring up this topic because I'm a registered voter who believes in equal rights all across the board. If the language in the amendment supports 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote, then maybe we should allow them to vote. In the United States, a 16 and 18-year-old or through 18-year-old can work, they can pay taxes, they can be incarcerated for crimes, but they cannot vote. These teenagers are taxpayers, they're students, and they're the future of tomorrow. More importantly, they should have a voice now. When teens from the ages of 16 to 18 work part-time and full-time jobs, they too pay local, state, federal income taxes. Some would think that paying taxes alone will give you the right to vote. The taxes voters pay, voters have some say on where these funds go and when they get to vote at the ballot box. Meanwhile, teenager workers under the age of 18 pay taxes, and they have no say over where these taxes go. According to the NYRA website, 80% of 16 and 17-year-olds work at some point before graduation, and 61% of those teenagers work during the regular school year. Teens from the ages of 16 to 18 pay almost this is crazy, $9.7 billion in taxes just last year alone. This money, these teenagers had no say, according to voting rights, had no say over where this money was spent. If the statistics show that students going to school and working, why do they not get to vote on where the money's spent and how we spend them, especially on things like education and equal rights? As we get older, we start to understand we're leaving everything to those that are the 16 and 17-year-old generation. So they literally get no say now, but we give them a say later. Some might believe that no one can be serious at the age of 16 or 17 years old to vote in our country today. Some believe that 16 and 17-year-olds will not even know how to vote. Jason Brenham with CNN brought up a very valid point, saying that many adults out there speak against letting 16 and 17-year-olds the chance to vote because they're ignorant about voting. But guess what? There's actually adults out there that are just as ignorant about voting also. According to the NYR website, a recent poll went out and asked eligible voters simple questions like, who was their state senator and who was the representative, who represented them in Congress? And about 70% of those people that were 16 to 17 years old, 70% of those that were adults over the age of 18 could not get those, 70% could not get those answers correct. If we can say that there's a lot of voters out there that do not know how to vote, that are over the age of 18, then what is really holding us back? We can help these young 16 and 17-year-olds learn how to vote and learn and teach them how to be part of the democratic process. To use this argument that 16 and 17-year-olds would not understand politics is merely an excuse that one would believe. If it's a lack of education, then guess what? It is our responsibility to teach them while they're young and while they're learning and be part of the process. A website, freechild.org, a really good website, says that training young people about the democratic process and educating them about democracy in general can be empowering, engaging activity. It is absolutely essential that student-adult partnerships focus on mutual accountability, transparency, and respect are the center of educating youth about voting, politics, and government. Once again, it comes back to us. That's according to freetrial.org. A group of 16 and 17-year-olds took a comprehensive exam called We the People, and this was years ago they did this. They tested again from 18 to 80-year-olds also in the same test, and the results put a hamper on the theory that just because they're under 18, they don't know anything about politics or government. When the 16 and 17-year-olds were asked simple questions like who the vice president was, 96% of them could answer it correctly. When they asked 18 to 80-year-olds, only 74% at the time could tell them who the vice president was. That's according to the NYR website, NYRA, that I use a lot. The same group was then asked if they knew what 2/3 veto override requirement was. I had to actually look it up myself. I forgot. And 80% of those that were 18 and under knew what they were talking about. 34% of people that were the age of 18 to 80 did not understand what that was. When it came to the question about explaining the political party ideology, like bipartisanship, Democrat, Republican, 87% of those that were 16 to 17 years old knew exactly what that meant and what they were talking about. Those that were 18 to 80, only 57% of those can answer that question correctly. As a father, I've learned that I am the best teacher for my children. And as an adult, we also learn the same thing, that we are the best teachers for the children of tomorrow, the adults of tomorrow that are the children now. Organizations like freechild.org are not just giving statistics why they think 16 and 17-year-olds should vote, they're actually helping to empower them. The Free Child Project is working to lower the voting ages from democracies all over the world, not just here in the United States. There's many resources out there to help empower these young voters. A famous organization is promoteourvote.com, a really good website. And it says, end quote, "It's time for an intervention. Voters in local elections are not reflective of the communities. Local elections have the lowest voter turnout rates and the highest levels of discrimination. Promote Our Vote gets at the heart of the problem by empowering localities, organizations, and campuses to raise turnout, protect access, and expand suffrage in the spirit of establishing constitutional right to vote. That's according to Promote Our Vote. Youth suffrage has many groups out there that are trying to fight against the grain and help lower the voting age, not only in this country, but all over the world. These teenagers may be young, but they're learning, and we have a task as teachers to help these youth to learn. Some might say that it will not work and that this plan will be shot down. This fight has actually begun, and so far it's been somewhat successful without having to put up a fight in the program at all. The teenagers wanting to lower the voting age have already been heard, and even though it's not at the federal level, some local elections have already started lowering the voting age. Excuse me. On November 5th, 2013, at Tacoma Park, Maryland, they became the first city in the United States to open its polls during general election to residents that were 16 years or younger. Or, I'm sorry, 18 years to 16 years old of age. That's according to Fair Vote. The city of Tacoma Park was officially the first city to do this. And what they found out is that during the general election, 59 people that were under the age of 18 to 16 met that age requirement, showed up. And that's about 17% of eligible voters that were that age from the local community. The community noticed that between 2009 and 2011, residents in their 20s had the lowest participation. They were about 1 to 2%, which is very sad, of the eligible voters. So that's when they all decided, hey, let's go ahead and change the age and see what happens. And they did. If we needed examples from places that are already doing this, where 16-year-olds are already voting since the 1990s, well, there's a couple places. In Germany, this has already really taken place. The city of Hanover in the 1996 had 56.5% turnout of 16 and 17-year-old voters, while 18 and 24-year-olds only had 49.1%. The city of Braunschweig in 1996 had 50.4% turnout, and 16 to 17-year-old voters, and 44.5% for voters that were over the age of 18. Even though these are a few places with 16 and 17-year-olds were given a chance to vote, they're still showing up statistically. These numbers are just numbers, and while we try to look at the equation as a whole, can voter turnout increase if the voting age is lowered to 16 in the United States at the federal level? I mean, that's the best question. A 16 and 17-year-old is given a lot of rights, but the right to vote has been one of those that is not quite there yet all over. Even though it started in Maryland, it isn't everywhere else yet. A 16 and 17-year-old is given, as voters ourselves, we could help be the voice to get those 16 and 17-year-olds a chance to pull the lever at the voting booth in our next general election. Yes, it is certain, I can say this right now, it is certain that a 16-year-old can work, they can go to jail, they can pay taxes, they can join the military and get a driver's license. Should a 16 and 17-year-old be allowed to vote? And would they understand what they're even doing at the ballot box come November? That's a question for all of us to answer when we leave here today. To use the argument that a 16 and 17-year-old are not smart enough to vote is careless. We have quite a bit of 16 and 17-year-olds out there that work, they pay taxes, they take care of family members. We also have 16 and 17-year-olds that can quote the Bill of Rights quicker than any of us in this room. The teenagers work hard already in our workforce. They have to steer clear of crime because they could go to jail, even prison. My wife's cousin was able to enlist in the military at the age of 17. And I remember having to pay taxes when I was 16. I never understood why my checks were always so small. We as voters have to look at the facts. As we leave this room, we have to tell us or ask ourselves why we should not allow 16 and 17-year-olds that are eligible in the U.S. as U.S. citizens to vote. Yes, the age on voting has changed once, and even the race and sex of a voter has changed. Our country is changing every single day. We can be a part of the change, and the change that makes our voting age younger to the age of 16, or we can do nothing about it. It's all up to us. what we decide to do. Thank you. The end.